Terence Crawford, urged to retire from boxing by his brother after becoming pound-for-pound number 1. One of the closest people to Terence Crawford has urged him to retire from the sport of boxing following the biggest win of his career. This past Saturday, Terence Crawford picked up the biggest win of his career thus far when he dethroned Canelo Alvarez to become the undisputed super middleweight champion despite going into the fight as a sizable underdog. Bud Crawford used his special fight IQ and outpointed the Mexican over 12 rounds, bringing his 7-year streak as a champion to an end. Straight after his win, Crawford was asked about potentially retiring, to which he stated he would sit down with his team and talk about the scenario. Crawford urged to retire by Shakur Stevenson following win over Canelo. Just a few days removed from the mega event at the Allegiant Stadium, the viewership figures were announced and the fight between Canelo and Crawford officially entered the history books. The undisputed super middleweight title fight is now the most viewed men's title fight of the century, netting over 41 million viewers, ranking it above even Floyd Mayweather versus Manny Pacquiao. And with Crawford now at the peak of his popularity and even being backed as greater than Mayweather, the consensus savior of boxing Turki Alashik has already potentially lined up his next fight. The TKO Boxing co-owner has questioned whether light heavyweight champion David Benavidez could move back down to super middleweight to take on the American. Despite that, Crawford has surprisingly been urged to retire by his longtime friend and fellow champion, Shakur Stevenson. For him to be this far along and all these years, I think he's number one, Stevenson told the Ariel Helwani show. I don't want to see him fight anymore. I don't. It's just a lot, it's a lot. From training camps, the wear and tear on your body, and me being his brother, I really have endless love for this guy. I don't want to see him fight again. I think he's done everything in the sport that he can do. There's nothing else that can be done. He made one of the best fighters of our generation look average, and I think that's a huge accomplishment, and I think it's time for him to retire on his high horse. Crawford topples Alexander Usyk and takes over as pound-for-pound number 1 for several years now. Alexander Usyk has been widely considered as the pound-for-pound number 1 fighter on the planet, especially after recent wins over Tyson Fury and Daniel Dubois. And he has been recognized as that in the Ring magazine's official rankings. However, following his win over the Mexican, Crawford has officially knocked Usyk off top spot and is now officially ranked the pound-for-pound number 1 boxer on the planet. Despite that, for now it still remains unknown whether the 37-year-old will step into the ring again, or if he will retire as the undisputed super middleweight champion. Premier League stars sign up for boxing tournament to take place in London next month. A group of former Premier League soccer stars have agreed to fight each other for charity in London next month. Former Tottenham Hotspur winger and England international David Bentley will take on ex-Chelsea midfielder Jody Morris in the main event as other well-known players join the event. They will all be coached by world-level boxing pros, including James DeGale, among others. The celebrity boxing show takes place on October 18th at a hotel in Mayfair in London. Plans from promoter, former Arsenal goalkeeper Graham Stack, are to raise £500,000 for the charities Helping Hands, the Willow Foundation, and Sport in Mind. Massive. World's Strongest Man, Eddie Hall, given Dylan Dennis fight guarantee in backstage KSI meeting. Premier League stars will fight each other in Boxing Showdown. It was announced recently that Pro Project Promotions, run by former Arsenal star Stack, would be launching his debut event, A Night to Remember, on October 18th. The show takes place at the Great Room in Grosvenor House Hotel. These legends are stepping out of their comfort zones to throw punches for a purpose, Stack said in a statement. With a star-studded crowd, world-class entertainment, and a mission to change lives, this night will be etched in history. The main event is a sizzling North London versus West London clash. David Bentley, known for his audacious flair and pinpoint crosses, steps into the ring with tenacious midfielder Jody Morris, a street-smart scrapper with a never-say-die spirit. Trained by Kev Mitchell, Bentley's slick footwork meets Morris' relentless grit, coached by Darren Barker, in a grudge match to settle a Premier League rivalry that's been simmering for decades. Expect fireworks as these two trade blows in a battle of style versus substance. The full card is as follows. David Bentley versus Jody Morris, Curtis Davies versus Paddy Kenny, Leroy Lita versus David Noble, Lee Trundle versus Anthony Gardner, and Greg Halford versus Marvin Elliott. Canelo Alvarez survived huge career scare after one of the worst robberies in boxing history. Canelo Alvarez can count himself fortunate to hold just a few losses on his pro boxing record, in part thanks to a rather controversial scorecard dished out in his favor. In the midst of an impressive six-fight winning spree off the back of his decision loss to the unbeaten Floyd Mayweather, Mexican icon Canelo Alvarez had captured the WBC and the ring middleweight crowns with a win over Miguel Cotto, Canelo Alvarez's controversial robbery against Gennady Golovkin. Kicking off his rivalry with veteran megastar Gennady Golovkin on this day in 2017, former undisputed super middleweight champion Canelo can count himself lucky to emerge with his winning spree intact off the back of their first pairing in a grudge trilogy spanning a whopping 5 years. Jalisco star Canelo would vie for the WBA, WBC, and IBF middleweight titles against Kazakhstan native Golovkin during their first pairing. Fighting to a split draw over the course of 12 rounds, Canelo found himself on the receiving end of an infamous scorecard of 118-110 issued by Adelaide Bird, in a pairing billed as one of the most controversial robberies in the history of the sport. Gennady Golovkin and Canelo Alvarez fought their way to a highly contentious split decision draw at the T-Mobile Arena hashtag on this day in 2017. The stalemate saw Golovkin retain his unified world middleweight titles, though many observers felt the Kazakh should have been awarded the PIC'd twitter.com/56bsh2noj. Boxing news at Boxing is September 16th, 2025. I thought that one of the judges had her card filled out before she came to the fight, Sanchez said a Bird during a post-fight press conference. But that's unfortunate that in Vegas, they seem to go to different schools to learn how to judge a fight, Sanchez explained. Canelo Alvarez's rematch and trilogy with Gennady Golovkin, immediately landing a rematch with Kazakh star Golovkin the following year. Almost to the day of their first matchup, Canelo once more counted himself lucky, taking home a majority decision win on that occasion over the course of 12 more rounds, scoring his 50th professional victory and inflicting the first defeat of Golovkin's career. Given the close nature of their rematch, too, the duo were tied to an immediate trilogy clash. However, 4 years would pass before the duo locked horns again, with Canelo emerging with bragging rights in a 2022 clash with Golovkin, sending the latter into retirement with a unanimous decision victory.